Who is the all-time leading rusher in the history of college football? All sorts of big names probably spring to mind. All-Americans, Heisman Trophy winners, first-round NFL draft picks. The answer is none of them. The answer is Jaleel McLaughlin. In and out of homelessness as a child, no D1 scholarship offers, undrafted free agent. He's used to being written off. But Jaleel doesn't care if you know his name. All he needs is a chance. This is the remarkable story about how a small kid from North Carolina overcame the odds to make it through to the NFL, and the simple but profound mindset that allowed him to turn dreams into reality.
And it's been great, man. I'm excited, for all of this opportunity. And I try to make the most of it because I just want to be out there on the football field.
In the McLaughlin household, love was plentiful, but money wasn't always so much. Jaleel and his 3 siblings had some tough times. Raised by a single mom, Tanya, in Marshville, North Carolina, there wasn't always enough to go around. Tanya worked all day at her factory job in nearby Spring Lake just to provide for her kids. The limited time she wasn't working, she spent trying to shower them with love and life lessons. Yet she couldn't help but feel this wasn't enough. To the time-strapped mom, sports were a way to keep her kids busy and surround them with positive role models. She got Jaleel and his brother Jay Sean, her 2 youngest, into both track and basketball. Jaleel hated track. Whenever he'd get on the start line, he'd cry because he didn't want to run. Tanya made him stick with it anyway. If he could run, she said, he could do anything in sports. Jaleel stuck with it. He wasn't the fastest, but he trained harder than anybody. As a 12-year-old, he became the 6th quickest in the state for the 200 meters in his age group. Right around this time, though, disaster struck. Jaleel's grandmother, whom he and his siblings had been living with, died from a heart attack, and the family lost the house. Meanwhile, Tanya was suddenly laid off from her factory job, meaning she no longer had the income to rent an apartment. At first, the family started living in a motel. Whenever Jaleel went outside and saw school buses, he would duck, since he didn't want his classmates seeing where he lived. When the money dried up even more, the family had no choice but to live out of a gray Ford Focus in a McDonald's parking lot. Jaleel was so frustrated, returning after a difficult football practice and having to sleep in the cramped back seat. One night, after hours fighting off bugs, he had enough. He got out of the car, slammed the door behind him, and walked off. Tanya started to cry. This wasn't the life she wanted for her son. 10 minutes later, Jaleel came back. He said sorry to his mom and told her not to worry. Tanya noticed at this moment that something seemed to have changed in Jaleel. It was as if a switch had clicked in his mind. From this time forward, he would use this immense adversity as his motivation, and do whatever he could to make his mom smile. It didn't matter whether it was the gym, the court, the track, or the football field. As a 3-sport athlete at Forest Hills High School, he put in work in all of them. Even once the housing situation stabilized and Tanya got another job, Jaleel didn't let up. When he wasn't getting much playing time for the basketball team as a sophomore, he asked his coach what he had to do to improve, and followed the instructions to a T. His junior year, he led the team to the state Elite 8, before winning the school's only ever state championship as a senior. While basketball was Jaleel's first love, as a 5'7" point guard, he realized his chances of being recruited were slim to none. On the track, despite being a member of several state champion relay teams, he wasn't quite fast enough to cut it at the next level. That left football. While his 8.4 yards per carry and 16 touchdowns as a high school senior were impressive, they weren't impressive enough to command any serious attention from Division I programs. The few Division II programs that gave him offers wanted him to convert to the defensive backfield, something he respectfully declined. Jaleel preferred to bet on himself. Though undersized, he knew he was good enough to tote the rock on the next level.
I seen the front that they were in, and I just had confidence in my offensive line, so I told my quarterback, I was like, oh man, it's touchdown before the ball even snapped, so.
All it took was one. Against the odds, Jaleel got a call from Notre Dame. Not that Notre Dame. Notre Dame College in South Euclid, Ohio. After watching a bit of Jaleel's tape and being impressed by his explosiveness, head coach Mike Jacobs made him an offer. Visiting campus for the first time, the freezing cold and snow was a bit different than what Jaleel was used to. But hey, it was a chance. Nothing was guaranteed for Jaleel at Notre Dame. Coach Jacobs told him he'd sit behind a few other running backs on the depth chart, and probably wouldn't get in the game. Jaleel carried with him to college one piece of advice that his mom had always said to him growing up. Whatever you do it 100%. At times, he took that wisdom literally. During summer practices before his freshman year, when players had to run wind sprints, freshmen were required to do 8. Everyone else, 16. When a coach blew the whistle after 8 to give the freshmen a break, Jaleel kept going. He ran all 16 just for kicks. He wanted to prove himself, and before long he had earned the starting spot. In his first game for Notre Dame, Jaleel rushed for an astounding 302 yards. This was just a precursor for things to come, as he finished the season with 2,421 yards and 18 touchdowns. He followed this up his sophomore season with a cool 2,316 yards and a whopping 33 touchdowns. By this point, Jaleel had set so many D2 records that D1 programs were taking notice. He loved Notre Dame, but when the coronavirus pandemic put the team's season in jeopardy, he knew he had to transfer somewhere he could get on the field. He chose FCS Youngstown State, opting to stay in Ohio. After a long day of preseason practices in 2020, Youngstown offensive coordinator Troy Rothenbuehler was wrapping up some work in his office when a staffer came in with a shocked look and said, "Hey coach, that running back who just transferred in from D2, he's in the stadium running sprints." Despite the next day's scheduled early morning workout, Jaleel was out there running by moonlight, all by himself. The Youngstown coaching staff would soon become quite accustomed to Jaleel's work ethic. But hard work alone wasn't enough to get on the field in the rough-and-tumble Missouri Valley Football Conference. Unlike in Division II, Jaleel could no longer simply rely on his instincts and physical skill. He now had to engage with the mental aspect of the game, reading defensive coverages and adapting to complicated schemes. He tried to improve this ability by watching film incessantly, so much so that he had to limit himself to only 1.5 hours a day, since he began overthinking in-game situations due to his encyclopedic knowledge of opposition tendencies. Between the abbreviated spring season and the more normal fall season in 2021, Jaleel combined for over 1,800 yards and 17 touchdowns in 17 games. This success, as usual for Jaleel, was fueled by a Herculean level of discipline. Even after long days with multiple practices, he would return to the football field and run through each of the 140 plays in the Youngstown playbook, one by one, imagining the 21 other players around him, visualizing every possible situation he might face in game. His coaches, worried that he might get injured maintaining his trademark intensity after playing what amounted to 2 seasons in just 10 months, pleaded with him to dial it down. But when you understand the life which led him to that point, it goes without saying that Jaleel didn't know how. To him, chances were not always guaranteed. When they came about, they were to be cherished. Jaleel knew that if he gave anything less than 100%, he would regret it. By the time the second to last game of his senior season rolled around in 2022, Jaleel stood just 219 yards away from the NCAA all-time career rushing yards record of 8,158. As the game progressed, it seemed as if everyone else in the stadium was more aware of the record than he was. The senior running back was just playing as normally, busting through open seams in the defense and breaking off large chunk plays. He finished the game with 227 yards, an unceremonious fourth quarter carry cementing him in history as the lone record holder for yardage in college football. It didn't seem to mean to him all that much. What meant more anyway was the postgame, when a familiar figure came down from the stands and gave him a big hug. It was Tanya, his mom, with a big smile. This moment reminded Jaleel what it was all for.
Have a goal, have a dream, have a chase, and chase it, man. Don't let nobody, tell you what you can be, no matter the circumstance, no matter how small, no matter where you come from. You got to go grab it. You got to work hard to go get it.
Despite his accolades, Jaleel was not invited to the Senior Bowl, nor the NFL Combine. He was not drafted in any of the 7 rounds of the NFL Draft. He signed with the Denver Broncos as an undrafted free agent, a long shot to make the team. The Broncos couldn't even get his name right on his jersey for the first preseason game. All the doubts, they didn't stop Jaleel from showing up at 5 a.m. every morning at the team practice facility to make the most of a precious chance. Here he was yet again, not for the first time in his life, an afterthought. That didn't last long.
This is the rookie Jaleel McLaughlin. Denver strikes first.